Okay, hello, Dave.
Hello, Conn.
This is Conn Carroll. I am the senior editorial writer for the Washington Examiner, and this is another edition of Pros and Conn. I'm talking to Dave Weigel, who is where exactly?
I am inside the Arizona House of Representatives, obviously. I'm disappointed that you couldn't tell. And here, I can show you here are the various trophies from charity softball games. You clearly tell those are Arizona and not New Mexican, or anything like that. I'm there for a story I'm trying to write about. The Democrats in the state who exist and are increasingly kind of optimistic about winning here. Just horse race stuff with trophies, with actual trophies.
Gotcha. So, but last night you were at the debate, right?
I was. It was a short drive from here, especially when there's not traffic, so it was a long drive from here. And I, like a lot of the people in the room, just thought, it's it's really tough to dive into conventional wisdom. I've thought about in the future, which I guess means 4 years from now, turning off all online things and just trying to analyze them with no feedback whatsoever at some point. But instead,
I don't think you'd be able to do that, Dave. I can't imagine you not on Twitter.
No, I probably couldn't do it. But the convention wasn't going in, which I agreed with, was that Mitt Romney had the most to gain. Rick Santorum had the most to lose, and they played their roles extremely well. Mitt Romney cynically took advantage of a bunch of things, as his want, and Rick Santorum admitted fault and refused to let a couple of policy things go, as is his want. And Newt Gingrich and Ron Paul were also there. I mean, you were not in this kind of hothouse of reporters, but what were you thinking of the? I should read your editorial. I won't pull it up now. But what did you make of it?
Oh, well, it was pretty clearly a bad night for Romney. I mean, a bad night for Santorum. There are a number
good.
of.
I was about to. You're challenging the conventional wisdom. That's Slate's job. Don't do that.
No. There are a number of bad exchanges for Santorum. I think the worst of which was his "No Child Left Behind" answer. Right. I mean, that came just mere minutes after John King asked everyone to pick one word that best defined them, and Santorum said courage. And it wasn't 5 minutes later that Rick Santorum was saying that he voted against his beliefs because he had to be a team player, which is pretty much exactly the opposite of political courage.
That wasn't a great answer.
Go ahead.
I think there could be a compassionate conservative argument to make for that would have maybe irritated wonks, but provided less of a soundbite than what he did there. Because sorry for interrupting, but Romney did one kind of campaign stop right before he left the state in the Associated Builders and Contractors, which is a union a organization that if it endorses anyone, will endorse him. I mean, they just don't like Santorum. They're very anti-union contracts, and he just used that there. The Santorum line about taking one for the team as kind of a blanket theory that Santorum will always take a dive on anything conservative, which is a little bit ridiculous, but sometimes you end up producing that line. Usually Romney's
right. I don't know how else he could have gotten around it. I mean, he voted for No Child Left Behind, and it's something that Republican base is fired up about. You can't come out for and support that Bush policy.
Are they that fired up about it?
Maybe my view is skewed because I sit in Heritage and talk to people who are all up to date on the issue, but I mean, the people who do care about education, especially on the conservative level, are very much against it. It just hits all the bad conservative notes. It's more spending, it's a federal takeover, it's more regulations. I mean, have you ever talked to anyone that's for it? I mean, I don't get out of DC.
Not on the right. No, I mean, I haven't, but it's just...
No.
No.
Have you ever talked to somebody that on the right that's for it?
Not who didn't personally work for the education department under Bush. Not really.
Okay.
It seemed to me it's not really a Santorum way. Again, he likes to dig in and win a debate or explain fully his position. Which I respect as somebody who talks to politicians. But he might have gotten done better with the Santorum, the Romney response to everything, which is, oh, that position I had, I don't have it anymore, and I would veto it today, and then moving on. I mean, the contrition. I don't know. I talked to, I guess, a couple Republicans who thought the contrition was good, and it's yet another thing that proves he's sincere and Romney's not. But I mean, does that point need to be argued some more, that Romney's not as sincere as other candidates?
Right. I mean, plus it just feeds into a larger conservative critique of Santorum, which is that, when it really matters, he has not been a small government conservative. There's Medicare Part D, there's the bridge to nowhere they talked about, and then the other big moment that I thought was huge for Santorum was that whole discussion about abstinence education and teaching our Planned Parenthood funding in Title X, which he voted for, right? So that's the Romney attack that they did some opposition research on, and they shoot that at Santorum, and he comes back with saying, oh, but I got federal funds for abstinence only education, and that answer might have flown in the Bush era, but not in the Tea Party era. That's the difference that Santorum is just unable to grasp, is that giving more federal money to have the Department of Education tell states and local governments what to do, that is not the Tea Party answer on anything, even if the subject is abstinence-only education.
This is a reason he didn't take off as the Tea Party candidate in the first place. It's funny, the whole time he's been running for president, this is literature, he's quoted this line from an early Karen Tumulty profile of him that described him as a Tea Party kind of guy before there was a Tea Party. And it was I don't want to say throwaway line, because that's dismissive. It's a really good article, and people should pay more attention early on to Santorum. But it wasn't really based on anything that it wasn't that Tea Parties were saying it. It was that as a way to explain that he was an outsider. It was a way to explain that he was an outsider, and that he's actually kind of written little comments like that. He's also the thing is, there are elements of the Tea Party that are mostly socially conservative, but came into the movement because of the general fusionist nature of the whole thing. If you were a conservative activist, that was where you were in 2009. And the latecomers were, seen as latecomers, but that's where they were. And I've talked to some guys in Iowa who were Tea Party activists, so they find for foremost, but they like Santorum because of the family issues. So he got off on some of that, but he's never been good on fiscal things. And I think this is probably a reason. Sometimes the DC punditocracy will embrace somebody who's a long shot. This is a reason they never embrace Santorum, because anyone with a institutional memory in DC does not trust him on fiscal issues.
Right, but let me just push back against that idea of there being a divide in the Tea Party between social conservative and fiscal people.
Go ahead. I'm not saying it's not a schism. It's just different factions.
Okay.
Yeah.
My point here is that they have the same agenda, though. And that's what's kind of frustrating about Santorum for me, and definitely more for some of my more libertarian Catholic friends like Tim Carney, is that Santorum had the potential to be a great kind of libertarian Catholic candidate, and that there's definitely a great case to be made, a great political principle around the idea of social conservatism, and the way to support those values is to keep the federal government out of all areas of public life as possible. Mm-hmm. But that's not Rick Santorum, right? Rick Santorum is anti-libertarian. He has basically said that. He says he doesn't believe in the individual rights of it. So he's just a it's not even he's left over from the Bush era. He is the Bush era. He does believe in compassionate conservatism. He does believe, like David Brooks does, that the federal government has a role to play in inculcating values within the nation.
Yeah, well,
and that's just not the way. Go ahead.
There's one line where he made that. He made me think of all of this, because he said, in response to a birth control question, he was always going to take the birth control question and label it a distraction, because he's been doing that. But the way he put it was, just because I believe this, it doesn't mean I want the government to have a program. That's what liberals believe, and that's actually
that was the high point of the debate for him. That was his best line.
It was a good line, but that sometimes he wants the program. I mean, in 2003, he the infamous interview that Dan Savage turned his little side career on. He was asked about sodomy laws, and he favored sodomy laws at the time, anti-sodomy laws, not laws that require sodomy. I'd be against that too, but because of the behavior that would be encouraged, we didn't have those laws. I mean, in 2005, we've all kind of forgotten it. Wasn't that in the long run? It's not that important, but he did help usher through Congress the Terry Schiavo bill. He wanted there to be a government program to fix that. Like, he wants to use government programs to improve society because he thinks. I mean, and it makes sense. He thinks that liberals have rolled this ball very far downhill, and you need to push it up. That before, if we were in a state of nature and you didn't have all these years of welfare programs and promiscuity, then you wouldn't need it. But you do need it. So for him to say that I don't think there should be government programs, is like not quite true. He does think there should be, and that's a problem that I think people who are more permissive on birth control, things like that, have with him. I mean, in Arizona, which is not. I mean, I don't think he's going to win here. But what I spent yesterday mostly just talking to Santorum supporters. And he's got them that look past that, but they are more libertarian and they don't agree on the birth control thing. They think hopefully he'll not, hopefully he won't act on that. But the problem with all this, if you're trying to vote for the guy, is there are things you can't really do quickly as president, like pass a budget or cut taxes. That actually takes a lot of negotiation. There are lots of executive orders that you can move on to. I mean, if he decided to, as president, to advocate for a Terry Schiavo-like cause again, as president with a huge megaphone and executive orders, he could do that. So, now, that might not be the...
No, I know, I completely agree with you. I think that was building on the point that I was making, is that there is a great possibility for a, libertarian, Catholic, true believer to make a great Tea Party small government message, and Rick Santorum's just not that guy. And that's why he never took off, and that's why, he's going to lose to Romney. He's just the last generation of Republican model. He's not a new Tea Party type libertarian Republican. He's more of the compassionate conservative Republican, and those types are going out like dinosaurs.
Yeah, I noticed Jennifer Rubin at the Post was one of the very few people who invested time in interviewing him on policy when he was a 1% candidate, not an elite candidate, you know what I mean? He's a 1% in the polls.
Right.
And she's turned on him completely because of that. I think it's just, it's good.
Well, I don't want to get too much into Jen Rubin's motives here, but let's put a little skepticism on that. I mean, Jen Rubin seems to turn on a dime on who's the biggest threat to Romney, not on any type of actual policy disagreement with anyone.
But the stated motives in her articles and posts are that he would destroy the Republican coalition because he's so obsessive on things that alienate women who don't really mind having employers cover birth control, things like that. And so you've seen, I think, even people who were sympathetic to him as the anti-Romney candidate, with this hard rethink, it's a problem. It was a problem for Gingrich, too. I mean, it really is kind of an irritating crisis, I think, for conservatives, that the last backstop they had against Romney are two candidates they always thought horribly flawed.
Right.
You just don't, on the record, you just don't trust them. I mean, this is why I think Bill Kristol keeps talking to Rubio or someone, because at least Rubio's record is short enough that he hasn't committed as many heresies as these guys.
Right.
Hoping the audio is okay. My quiet area has become occupied by Boy Scouts.
As long as we're on the subject, did you see that Politico post today having all those headlines from Jen Rubin's blog that were anti-Santorum?
Yeah. Because she's prolific and sinks into issues, then they were all within 55 minutes of each other.
Right.
Yeah,
and of course, people were contrasting with your post, the Santorum Rubin 2012 post.
That's right. Which at that time, I think because he was making arguments that there are different points in the primary where people serve useful roles. I mean, I think it's Will Wilkinson from The Economist and other places. He wrote for the New Republic this article how he thinks Ron Paul's bad for libertarians writ large, but part of him likes to see somebody on stage talking about blowback right next to Mitt Romney. And so there's like points in the primary where you want somebody to advocate for something. I think that point in the primary, what she liked about Santorum, and just to not hone in too narrowly on her, I think what a lot of people liked about Santorum at that time was that you had Huntsman and occasionally Romney and other people waffling on foreign policy questions, on interventionist foreign policy questions, and Santorum was always there with an extremely aggressive, we should have helped the Green Revolution in Iran, we should stabilize these governments with covert actions. I mean, I think she was rewarding him for that at that point in time, and now that that's not really a problem with whoever the Republicans nominate, you're hearing less of that. But it hasn't come up quite as much because it's not a foreign policy election yet. But he has the most aggressive foreign policy prescription of any candidate and that came up in the debate, but very little in the spin afterward.
Right. Mm-hmm. But, between Gingrich, Santorum, and Romney, there's no big, dove in that room. They're all pretty tough on foreign policy-wise. I don't think there's a huge difference between them.
There isn't. I actually guess Jim Gingrich last night talked about something that seems really contradictory, self-negating. Let's announce at debate stage we need more covert action. Santorum had done that months earlier, and I think we kind of already are doing covert action, but yeah, there's not a lot of difference there. They've got, from a number of perspectives, there's a certain sort of John Huntsman voter out there. There weren't a ton, but a voter who really thinks you can replace Obama, but continue saving money with a minimal foreign policy, and that's gone. You either have Ron Paul or you have somebody who wants to spend more on the military and intervene faster. And in Santorum's case, I think he referred to our ally in Egypt, referring to Mubarak. So somebody will have a realpolitik that involves lots of foreign aid and propping up dictators. Sorry, presidents, but you're basically a dictator.
Well, that's a very principled case for Jim Rubin's flip-flop on Santorum. It's not exactly the mainstream view, but I appreciate it.
No, I don't know.
Moving on,
blogging heads. I don't argue enough. I kind of see where everyone's coming from, so I can try to explain it.
Well, let's see about this one. Do you think there is any possibility of a new candidate getting into this race? I don't know if you saw the Haley Barbour interview with ABC yesterday, where he said it's entirely possible that if Santorum and Romney keep splitting the votes, that another candidate might get in. Do you think that's possible?
I always feel horrible for Santorum when that comes up, because it's basically when Romney's doing well, we don't have that discussion, and when Santorum does well, the discussion is not can Santorum be the nominee. It's, oh God, who can we pick to replace this guy? The thing that makes it possible theoretically is it's a relatively high number of Republicans who say in polls that they're not satisfied. It's around 40% sometimes that say they don't like the choice of candidates. And when there was a very brief discussion of this in 2008, really, I don't know how much life it had beyond political comment threads. But when Hillary and Obama were deadlocked, there was some pundit gabbing about Gore as a broker candidate. There wasn't any interest because enormous numbers of Democrats really liked both Obama and Hillary, and they didn't even run negative campaigns against each other, really. It was surrogate stuff, but not attacking each other like this campaign. That's what makes it possible, is that because no one's falling in love with these candidates, there are enough rank-and-file Republican voters who are unsatisfied that they would be open to a candidate coming in. And it's...
No, Go ahead.
Oh no!
I absolutely agree. In 2008, Obama and Hillary were, either one of them could have been dream candidates.
Yeah.
They were both eminently qualified, had great campaigns, were sympathetic candidates, were skilled candidates. They were both great choices, and the base loved both of them. Whereas that as you said, is just absolutely not true with this Republican field. Just look at the polls. Watch the Daily Show. It's like the Republicans are just desperate to, date it or to settle down with anyone but Romney. But every time they look at someone new, they're worse than Romney, and they're definitely not satisfied. So there's definitely a demand there for it. There's a market there for it. But I also just wanted to point out that it's also just imminently possible. Karl Rove had another op-ed today saying that it was just completely impossible. There's no way a new candidate could get into the race. And he tried to make a numerical case for it, that the filing deadlines are all passed, and they just can't get enough delegates for it. But Chuck Todd then tweeted out that Karl Rove forgot about this or didn't mention the state conventions, which is true.
Yeah.
And as someone who's covered Iowa, I'm sure you probably know that there were no delegates awarded that night.
Not in actually. Santorum has yet to win a state in which delegates were awarded that night.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what a lot of people don't realize is that all that the Iowa caucuses did is that it wasn't just a straw poll. They actually did vote for some people. They did vote for delegates at the caucus level to then go to the county conventions. And then those county conventions will elect delegates to go to the congressional district conventions and 2 nominees to go to the state nominating committee. And then those 2 groups will then vote on June 16th on actual delegates. And so I actually called up the Iowa Republican Party and posed them a hypothetical. If, let's say, a Paul Ryan or a Mitch Daniels were to get into the race after Super Tuesday, let's just say around St. Patrick's Day or so on, could they theoretically go up to a delegate in Iowa or campaign in Iowa, and could a delegate who's running for the state convention there say, vote for me on the basis that I'll vote for Paul Ryan at the convention? And he said, absolutely. These candidates aren't bound by anything. So, in all those states, in Colorado, in Maine, Minnesota, Missouri, Washington, that's 252 delegates right there. And all those delegates are basically still up for grabs. They're not committed to anyone.
Yeah, that's totally true. I was trying to think of the things that can prevent that. The one that comes to mind is that Ron Paul's people have been pretty effective in locking down as many delegates as they can in the process. The early stage delegates, people who are going to go to the caucus or the county conventions.
Right.
Now, could those people show up at the state convention, overwhelm it, and prevent nomination? Prevent the nomination of new candidates. Possibly the rules are going to differ, and it's not even 50 states. It's 50 states, DC, and the territories. So there's going to be. This is math that no one has actually done yet. There's going to be some amount of delegates that were chosen right away. But, there was way too much focus on how the deadline for someone to get in the race was in October because that's when we need to get on the Florida ballot. Florida was 25 delegates. It's good for somebody, but that's not going to – that really is a drop in the bucket. We've chosen, I think, the states that have gone so far, they represent about less than 10% of the delegates. And – they haven't even chosen that many yet. Right. So it's real, and it's just.
Although most of the filing deadlines for most states have already passed, you only have states kind of at the end where people could still file, like Nebraska's March 7th, Oregon's March 6th, but you do have some super late ones where you could definitely see someone in. Like for example, California, right? That's 172 delegates right there. Their filing deadline is not until March 23rd. You look at like the swing state of Ohio, right? Filing deadlines, March 14th. That's 66 delegates. So, let's say
they have a primary on March 6th.
Right. Not Ohio.
Yeah, Ohio.
Oh, well, maybe I guess the other. I mean, they're actually delegates. I don't think are selected until June 12th. I don't think.
Oh, I think you're right. See, we should, I think we've actually both spent some time looking at these rules and calling state parties, but it's pretty good. I mean, a difference between this time and last time, again, 2008, it's more comparable to 2008 than even though you don't have the front loading of all those states in the beginning. I don't think there is a guru. Like, I was trying to talk to Romney people yesterday and figure out if there is a guru who has calculated the delegate game for every state, the way there were people who worked for Obama who did this. There might be very quiet people doing that, but the way they've acted so far, first of all, they don't want to say it's about delegates because that sounds like you're losing, and that's what Ron Paul says.
Right.
But the way that they're moving the candidate around, the only thing that reveals the great organization is that they've gotten on all the ballots, and that their people do show up to some of these county events. But it's not like Obama did. I mean, they're not overwhelming. I think Romney, Colorado was the example where he totally plummeted from the last caucus. But Maine's another good example where he went from winning handily to winning by, I think, less than 100 votes over Ron Paul in the straw poll.
Yeah, by a thread.
He's just not turning out as many people as he was. That's a reflection, I think, of if there's not that much natural enthusiasm about the guy, you can't game the delegates systems this much. So are they going to have it locked up so much that a Christie is afraid of entering? I don't think so. I mean, it's probably good for them that they got Christie on board as an endorser early, so it'd be embarrassing if you tried to pull out and run. Mitch Daniels has made no such commitment. I just think Daniels seems to be the one, feels more like a establishment pick that has no real, he obviously has enough political talent to win 2 elections in Indiana, but he is not like a inspiring populist who the base is latched onto. Ryan, I think, is the most credible in terms of somebody that the base respects and likes, and that you'll find Republicans in Congress who haven't endorsed yet who have begged Ryan to run. Like, they still exist. I think that's the one that's the most possible.
Well, I just remember, after Newt Gingrich went after Paul Ryan, there was that voter up in Iowa that confronted Gingrich about that.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that showed that there is a educated base out there that is, 100% behind Paul Ryan. And you're right. As much as I love Mitch Daniels, I don't think that he would inspire that same kind of loyalty in rank and file Republicans.
Yeah, I don't. It's just we're just talking purely about like optics. It's not just optics. It's that the Daniels biography is pretty good, but it's not like Ryan where people feel like he has taken arrows for them on the most important issue of all time, and I think that oversells him. That oversells him a little because he doesn't actually even balance the budget for more than a decade if his plan is passed. But having said that, it probably helps him that Congress is so dysfunctional that it's not like he's going to be missing anything if he runs for president. I mean,
no, right? I mean, as soon as he gets his budget passed, which will happen, he'll introduce it late March. It'll get passed like mid-April
in the House.
He's done.
Yeah.
Right. Well, but I mean, he's not going to mess with in the Senate, so he's pretty much done at that point. He's got nothing to do till next year. And I think the other advantage he has over Daniels is Daniels, has the one instance where he followed Obama after the State of the Union, and he did a very serviceable job, better than most people did. But he wasn't in the same room with Obama. He didn't challenge him personally. Whereas, Paul Ryan has a couple instances, I can think of 3 off the top of my head, where he's been in the same room as Obama and has forcefully challenged him each time and done well. And that definitely counts for something. Republicans in the base remember that. They remember him, dressing Obama down during that healthcare summit at the Blair House. Basically just reading Obama the Riot Act, and Obama not having any good response at all. So I think that same hunger you saw with people, how eagerly they embraced Newt Gingrich. Paul Ryan's their guy in that point. This is a guy who has stood toe to toe with Obama already, and delivered. So
yeah, I'm waiting for somebody. I mean, it could just be somebody on who has a YouTube account because these people exist. They've they mostly support Ron Paul. But somebody who just as a hobby makes a video like that matches up Paul Ryan being awesome, and tries to build momentum. What's happened? I mean, there already is a kind of kooky draft Hillary Clinton ad campaign that's run in I think it's run on the same cable stations that broadcast Wayne's World show from his basement. No money on these ads, but you can actually you can have a totally agitprop campaign for Ryan if you want. I don't think you get any settling either, and I say settling either something that says Romney's winning or Santorum's winning or settling in the sense that we know that the race will last a while until March 6th. I think that's when you look at it again. So should we look? We should probably look for March, right? March 6th is when there's a big batch of primaries, and then later in the month the House passes the Ryan budget. And then we should start watching for the next round of speculation.
Right. Well, it all depends on Rick Santorum doing well. I mean, he's going to have to. I mean, he can afford to get him blowing out in Arizona and Michigan, but he's going to have to win some of those southern states on Super Tuesday in order for there to continue doubts about Romney. If Romney sweeps Super Tuesday, then the Republican base is just going to have to suck it up and eat the dog food.
Yeah, he's not gonna sweep. I mean, he's not gonna win Oklahoma. I think Georgia's close, but it's tough. Ohio. I mean, Romney will not sweep it. It's really kind of weird for somebody to even McCain didn't sweep Super Tuesday. I think the only time it's ever happened when they're all Southern primaries and there's one Southern candidate who is able to put it all together. You've got a mix of caucuses, northeastern states that he'll do. I mean, he'll win Michigan, he'll win Vermont. They wouldn't. I was trying to get them to predict something in Idaho and Alaska caucuses. They wouldn't predict anything. But he could win this Western East Coast combination. They get blown out everywhere else, and that wouldn't be very. That would be good for him. Also the Gingrich people. I mean, for as little money as he has, the message they were saying yesterday. A couple of us were talking to his spokesman, and a couple hacks from the press, and somebody was referring to states, which states we win. They were saying the kind of the loser argument. Oh, it's not about states; it's about delegates. I mean, that's tough to make, but I mean, that's what they're doing. They're campaigning in Washington State because they think they can take a few there, and then they'll just try to get as many as possible that day. And I think convince the media, as Obama convinced the media in 2008. Look, it doesn't even matter who won the states. Look at how few delegates Romney netted. This is a thing we probably will not know until the day after, that Wednesday after. But, it's possible that Romney could do pretty well on Super Tuesday. We could all write somebody's obituary, and then he only netted 50 delegates over everyone else.
No, that's entirely possible. Especially if you look at ones that were actually assigned as opposed to unbound ones or ones that are to be elected later. Mm-hmm. It could definitely be that way. Let's close on this. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this? These rumors, this talk that Romney is maxing out on rich donors and may have to dip into his own personal wealth in order to fund his campaign past Super Tuesday?
I believe it just because he is raising. I mean, he's not raising substantially more every quarter. He's raising a fraction of what Obama did. If that's the same point when he. Remember, Obama's January in 2008. It was this quartet of primaries, and he, by the end, at one Iowa there's a surge. He won South Carolina as a surge, but he lost a couple in between. It was comparable to Romney's because Romney won Florida at the end, and less than a quarter as much as Obama raised. The thing is, Romney, I'm sure he's lost something. In the recession, he's worth less than he was in 2008. But if he wanted to, he could add another $40 million to his campaign and blow people out. He's actually being remarkably cheap here. I think the flow into the super PAC is not going to stop, but his campaign is definitely not raising is drying up a little and would need to recharge.
Well, I
don't know what caused that. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I don't know if they can recharge because Romney doesn't have the mass market appeal to get a lot of small $25, $50, even $100, $200 donations. right? I mean, his fundraising is tapering off because he basically maxed out of $2,000 checks he can get.
No, I mean, I'd say he'd only
you know,
recharge if he was the nominee and there was a rallying effect and he was raising general election money. That's basically it. Yeah.
No, but even if you kind of have a rallying effect, I think the Republican base kind of knows that he's a rich guy. So why am I going to give, Mitt Romney 50 or 100 of my bucks when he could easily just spend it himself? That's not true of another. If it was like Tim Pawlenty or Rick Santorum, who has a more blue collar feel. I mean, people would want to give that guy money if he was surging because they just more identify with him. Whereas not even the Republican base looks at Romney and thinks, oh, well, that's a guy that needs my money.
Well, except, I mean, Santorum has raised some money, but, like, no one's raising as much as Scott Brown was raising in the final week of his Senate election. Like, no one's quite figured out how to recreate the momentum of a really, popular Senate campaign, like a one state out of 50 Senate campaign in 2010. And there was more of it for Santorum. I mean, they talked about raising $1 million a day that week when they won no delegates, but kind of won 3 states. Mm-hmm. And then they haven't mentioned whether they've been raising $1 million a day since then. I don't know. I don't know where the conservative donor base is this time compared to 2010. It's just, and I think that's part of the problem. And we're circling back. It's just that Santorum is preferable in lots of ways to Romney, and there are people who are increasingly passionate about him, but not the crusade of making sure Mitt Romney does not win the nomination is just not as inspiring as helping the average congressional candidate take a seat away from a Democrat who would vote for Nancy Pelosi. I don't know when that changes. I mean, I've written a little bit about conservative pessimism, and like the sense I've gotten is that it is overrated. But if you look at the money, it's not the kind of donations you see when people are excited about a candidate or a cause. And for all the anger there is towards Barack Obama, the RNC is doing quite well. The NRSC is doing quite well, and candidates I think are doing fine. But they're not rushing the presidential candidates, and that's that I think would stop being a problem in the general, but it reveals a lot right now.
No, it does, absolutely, which is just another reason why a Paul Ryan late entrance is still entirely feasible.
Yeah, well, you actually, I think, in the course of discussion, convinced me that it's more possible because I kept writing that off. It's just, but I realized a lot of my writing off was that at some point people would find Romney more acceptable, and it just hasn't quite proven true. Even if it's proven
the dogs
true on
just won't eat the dog food.
Even if it's proven true on, like, if he sweeps on Tuesday, which would mean 2 states, kind of a small sweep, does not mean he's going to even win a majority delegates on a week later. I mean, he will probably. I think it's perfectly likely, if there was in trade for this kind of weird craps kind of bet, that he would win both states and then get killed in Washington caucuses because the Washington caucuses don't vote for guys like him. I mean, Pat Robertson won them. Mike Huckabee almost won them. Not almost, but he did extremely well in them. So he probably, I mean, if he gets a momentum story, it's over 4 days later.
Right.
Which is good.
So, Dave,
there shouldn't be. Not like momentum stories.
Yeah. I think it's a good place to end, Dave. Do you have any parting thoughts about the wonderful state of Arizona?
I think Michigan should move here. So I don't have nothing against Michigan, but I think after I got my email on how my carefully planned trip to cover stuff on the weekend is being waylaid by snow, it reminds me that all primaries should be in Arizona or New Mexico until June. Maybe Southern California.
I'm for that.
That'd be fun.
I'm all for that.
That's about it. That's my shallow parting thought.
Okay.
I will. Good talking to you, Conn.
Great talking to you, Dave. Okay. Talk to you about it.